If you've heard Anders speak before, you might remember that he calls himself an American by choice because he was born an American but happened to be in another country in Northern Europe. And he's also an active member in the Toastmasters and in Front Range Objectivism. So to talk about Atlas Shrugged, please welcome Anders Ingemarson.
Ari didn't mention how these speeches came about, did he? When he's
Mike, hold it a little closer.
okay, all right, good. So Ari didn't mention the whole story behind how these speeches came about. He sent out an email asking, "Hey, is anybody willing to pledge to give a speech if I raise this much money?" And the four of us, because Kurt Barbera, who many of you know, he gave a speech on the Fountainhead, and Hannah Krenning, I believe, gave a speech on We the Living. But I was first up, and I picked Atlas Shrugged because I love that book. It's a cliche, but it basically saved my life, and it changed my life. But once I sat down and realized that this is the crowd I'm going to speak to about this, I was thinking, all right, what do I tell you guys about Atlas Shrugged that you don't already know? I assume the vast majority of you have read it. Probably saw the movie, right? Got the t-shirt maybe? Have the ringtone? Yeah, I don't know if there's a ringtone, but if there is one, someone here has it probably.
The boxers.
Yeah.
Have the boxers.
Oh, okay, very good. Boxers. But I'm pretty sure that you all share the feeling that we're actually living it right now. So instead of going into detail and talk about the book as such, I thought I would offer some observations on the book and on the reactions that I've received to the book from people that I've come across over the past 20 years since I first read it. And by the way, I did read it in Swedish the first time. And in addition to that, I mean, it has been a gratifying 20 years because, as you know, the interest has really taken off and it sells millions and millions of copies every year. But we still have a long way to go, so I will also offer a couple of suggestions for how we spread the word even more and get even more people to read Atlas Shrugged. Now, when it comes to the reactions to the book, I have divided people into three groups. We have the enthusiasts, we have the fans, and we have the foes. The enthusiasts are those of us who consider ourselves objectivists. We have taken all of Ayn Rand's philosophy to heart and try to live by it as well as we can. Now, our numbers are growing, but we're, sadly to say, I think we're still in a minority. If I would give a number, a few 100,000. Now, the second group, however, the fans, is huge and growing leaps and bounds. Now the fans are the people who have read the book. I mean, they see the prophecies of Atlas Shrugged. They like it as a really great book, as great literature. But they're not yet ready to take the step to embrace the entire philosophy of Ayn Rand. Some of them call themselves Tea Partiers. You have fiscal conservatives, you have constitutional conservatives, libertarians. You know, they come in many variations. But I think one of the thorniest points with Ayn Rand's philosophy that many in these groups experience is her morality. Stephen mentioned it. I mean, the virtue of selfishness. That's kind of a pretty brave phrase to put out there. So the rational egoism that she bases her morality on, that is something that people struggle with. And for good reasons. I mean, it's diametrically opposite to the morality that has ruled us for, the past 2,000 years or so. The virtue of sacrifice, altruism as a moral ideal, etc., etc. So changing that position takes time. It's a challenge. And you need to spend a lot of time thinking, a lot of reflection to see how you can take on that philosophy and incorporate it in your life. And I think I'm seeing that a lot of people as an intermediate step. they say, you know what, that is a private matter. I practice this, but the government should leave it out. They should not get involved. And in that sense, we can all make common cause with Ayn Rand. Even though you're not yet ready to take that final step away from this morality, we can join cause with Ayn Rand and fight for individualism and for capitalism. So those are the fans. Now we come to the foes. Now the fans and the enthusiasts, they have all read the book, no doubt. The foes, not necessarily. A lot of people have opinions about Atlas Shrugged without necessarily having read it, or having finished it, I should say. I think there are a lot of people out there who start the book, and after a certain time they realize, consciously or subconsciously, that, you know, those villains here, they look a lot like me. This is getting a little bit too close for comfort. So they either put away the book and just become foes of it right there and then. Now, the villains, or the foes I should say, come in different flavors. Yeah, that's a little strong. But there are certain religious conservatives that fall in the foe category. You have the religious leftists, and then you have the secular leftists. And what they all have in common is obviously that they want our government to be an agent for moral conditioning, and they want our government to redistribute our resources. The only real thing that separates the two is whether we should take the socialist or the theocratic path to hell. Now they obviously also advocate the virtue of sacrifice, and that takes them to the position of asking for more entitlements, more regulation, more taxes, all in the name of protecting the little guy and helping the poor, which nowadays is apparently 99% of us. But I want you to notice one thing with the foes and their criticism. I don't know if you've observed it, but you rarely get any constructive arguments. From the fans who are struggling with Ayn Rand's philosophy, you can engage in an intellectual discussion. With most of the foes, that's not the case. You see a lot of ad hominems, you see sarcasm, cynicism, and you have the snarky comments such as, well, only juveniles can like Ayn Rand. If you haven't grown out of it by age 20, you know, you're pretty much a lost soul. So we see a lot of that, and that's annoying, but in a way it's a positive sign, because they don't have any arguments. They can just destroy and tear down and create a lot of damage, and obviously they have a lot of power. But intellectually, and I may be Pollyanna-ish, on some level the battle is won. We have the answers, and now it's up to us to stop them from making more damage. And that brings me to my last point of my two favorites way of supporting Atlas Shrugged and getting the word out there and have even more people reading it, because I think that is a crucial part of limiting that damage and getting the good ideas out there. Ari has mentioned it, Stephen has mentioned it, the Ayn Rand Institute book projects, fabulous. They didn't give you the numbers, but it has been in existence for about 10 years. 2 million copies of her novels have been distributed. 2 million. And it's increasing, so in the last couple of years it has been between 300,000 and 400,000. So there are approximately 1 million copies of her books out there that are read by high school kids every year. That is how you change a culture long term. Now, more in the short term, and this goes back to the foes. How do you address the foes and these annoying, snarky comments that they have? Well, this is what I do. There are many ways, but this I found worked pretty well for me. I take a deep breath, or 2 or 3, try not to hyperventilate, and then I formulate a brief response. And my focus is not the foe. I'm not trying to engage in argumentation with him, because he's a lost soul and reality will punish him in due time. But his audience has a lot of more open-minded individuals. You don't know who's reading him. They may not agree with him. So what I normally do, I may comment on the issue at hand, whatever it is, but I always try to get in a sentence to the effect of, if you, the reader or the listener, are concerned with this issue, pick up a copy of Atlas Shrugged and read it and form your own opinion. You're appealing to their integrity, their judgment. They can make up their own minds. That argument would never come into the head of a leftist, you know? They just want to push it down your throat. So, in summary, the fans are growing leaps and bounds. It's a huge, huge group that is important for spreading the word, whether they subscribe to the entire philosophy of Ayn Rand or not. The foes are intellectually impotent. Remember that. Yes, engage in debate with them and respond to them, but we have won the intellectual battle. And to that effect, to limit that damage, support the book project again, and focus on the audience when you take on the foes. Victory is closer than you think. Thank you.